you find adventure at the click of a button, or from the turn of a page, or the casting of a die. Join your hosts, Coniff and Shiloh, on an unforgettable journey. Questing the Multiverse.
I spilled tea on my leg, Shiloh, as that was going. And all over my desk, apparently. Classic questing the multiverse right here. Anyway, welcome to episode 28. Listener, I think it's 28. Shiloh, how have you been? It's been I actually got to see you in Discord a little bit this weekend.
Yeah.
You've slowed down? That's not a word.
I've slowed it down.
I've slowed it down a bit.
Yeah,
I suppose.
I don't know. I just haven't really. Work's been brutal this past week, and when I've gotten home, I've just been kind of like, I'm just relaxed and rewatched The Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King, and rewatched Dune 1.
Did you skip Two Towers?
I haven't gotten that far yet. This is the extended editions.
You watched Return of the King, though.
I'm sorry, Two Towers. Sorry. I didn't skip the Two Towers.
Maybe he just doesn't like Rohan.
I just don't like the dead marshes.
The dead marshes, the Rohirrim. There could be any number of things.
Good stuff. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, that shows you right there as big of a Tolkien fan as I am. I got the order of the books wrong. So.
No, it's...
Anyway, I just haven't really played much or been in the mood. Well, that, and when I get home, most people are in bed. I know you probably aren't, but...
it depends on the night.
Quiet. Yeah.
Or,
sure. By the time I get around to logging in, it's close to 10, and generally, I know people are, even if there's people in there, they're about to go, so I'm like, no, I'll just read or watch stuff. So I really haven't played much of anything. I've played a little bit of Elden Ring. I think I mentioned that last podcast, and I gotten past Marguerite, the Fell-Omen.
Yeah, the one at the beginning of Stormvale.
The first boss is Stormvale Castle, and a multiplayer playthrough with Tempest, but he wasn't there. I was like, I don't know what else to do, so I'll just play. Yeah, I picked up a dual wield build for this character, and I'm kind of enjoying it. It's a little OP right now, but I'm sure that'll change. So yeah, but that's really about it, video game wise.
Yes.
Sorry.
No. It brings a good topic of conversation, I think, and I feel like not just you, not just myself, but it's this time of year. It's the springtime, right? Mm-hmm. There's not a lot releasing, and if it has, it was like February, maybe January, and now people are just kind of waiting until the summertime. But my question is, what do you do when you feel this gaming funk or this gaming rut? Like, is there a fallback game that you have? Because we were talking, myself and Weevil, before you joined, and Jibs, about just, just kind of playing whatever tickles the fancy, but nothing's really like tickling the fancy a lot.
Yeah.
Terrible analogy.
I almost offered that as a suggestion but it was one of those fleeting thoughts that I had that felt like it was like, oh, this just sounds so morbid or something. But it was because it really, at the time, I was like, oh, everything is just so futile. Like, futile. I just can't.
It's an election year. The world can't get much worse.
Yeah, and it sounds so morose and futile, but it really is like when. Well, I don't know, but yeah, it's just I don't know. The fact that I just really haven't really played, I haven't really felt the desire to really play much.
Do you feel like it's almost it's like a come down, like coming down from the high of 2023? And I asked this is all goes hand in hand, but last night, myself, Tempest, and Koala had this conversation about like what games are coming soon. Mm-hmm. You might have joined at some point for this. I don't know, maybe not. But the idea was, we're looking at the rest of this year. And what really spurred this on was a comment that I made. Be curious to hear if listeners would agree with this or not. That if you were to judge Game of the Year by the end of this month, for like the first part of 2024, the only real contender that I could think of that would actually win would be Helldivers 2. It's a game that has come out. It has blown up. People are all over, the world playing this game and telling stories with their friends. And I mean, just yesterday, Tempest invited another Kiwi, Mr. Adsman. So if he listens to this episode, this is about you. We were playing on a extreme difficulty, which is extremely too hard for me, frankly. And we got to the very end of this mission, and all we had to do was hit one button on a terminal, and it was just me and Adsman up. All he had to do was hit one button on the terminal, and it would launch the ICBM, and we'd finish the mission. And he accidentally threw a stratagem, which was a airstrike right on top of us, and we died, and it was the end of that. So, but those are the stories that people are making, right? And so, as of now, it's the only real contender, I would say, for Game of the Year. If you were to pause by the end of March and say, "What do we got?" And it made me realize, my other question that I just posed to you. It's like, well, what do you do when you're in this sort of mindset of like, man, I just played like back-to-back bangers last year. I mean, for us, it was Divinity, Original Sin. I know we put a chunk of time into Division 2, I think you more than myself, and then straight into Baldur's Gate 3, and then somewhat of Starfield, and then, playing the New World expansion that came out, or then playing back to World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy. Like, it was just nonstop for the last half of 2023.
Yeah.
I think the tide is going back out to sea now, and so now we're just kind of left with whatever we can feel
whatever Driftwood games we've kind of gone, oh yeah, I forgot to finish that.
So where are you at with that?
Yeah, well, right now I'm just kind of ignoring the Driftwood, I suppose.
That's fair.
Maybe except for Elden Ring. But that is just kind of a refresher course before Shadow of the Erd Tree launches in June. I honestly, I think it's probably best for my health anyway, is I've just been listening to music and walking around, trying to get into a better physical routine, even though I'm, constantly doing stuff at work. It's just, at my age, it's just not enough. I just have to keep going, but
making it harder and harder.
Yeah, doesn't get any easier. But mainly shows, I suppose. My free time at night, I've just been crashing and watching a show or trying to get caught up on something, although I've already kind of gotten caught up with what I really wanted to see there. So hence the rewatching of the 15th time or whatever of, Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers. So
that's fair.
It's just, it is what it is. I'm not really sad about it. It's just, I think it's probably for the best, and it makes me appreciate, I think, the little bit of gaming that I've been able to get in. But it is sad, especially for me personally, because I don't know if you would call it I guess I am, for the most part, I don't know, what's the term?
A fox?
Yeah, that's it.
I know, I
a
can't help
specific
you.
type of gamer. Crap! The words escaped me.
It was there and then it vanished.
Yeah, the type of gamer that basically just either plays one game, particularly an MMO, almost a career.
A lifestyle gamer?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like a lifestyle gamer.
Okay.
Is kind of what I've been for the most part. And when I don't have that lifestyle game present, which is for the most part an MMO, because that's what MMOs are, lifestyle games for the most part. I guess this is almost worrisome. Like, if an MMO doesn't come out soon, they're going to lose a lot of these lifestyle gamers, because they're going to have, I don't have a lifestyle anymore, and they're going to find another lifestyle. And, before you know it, all these, lifestyle MMO junkies like myself, I suppose, are going to be hitting the streets and doing more productive things. I don't know. So it's up to you, MMO developers, to make more drugs. That's basically what I'm saying.
To keep us sedated and paying our sub fees.
And it's really not. And I guess that's why I do have my eye on a couple MMOs, I think.
Yeah.
Who knows if, at this point, possibly this Dune Awakening game that we talked about last week. PAX Day, I'm still about. I don't know what it's going to be. Will it just be another? And the funny thing is, these are more survival type MMOs. So
I was going to make that comment. Like, that's not you and I's bread and butter as far as MMOs are concerned.
No, it's probably not a lot of people's.
Right.
But,
And I think part of this is also the fact that, like, while there's still, we still have plans to kind of do a one night a week Mythic Plus run with some good friends. Like, you could probably say, like, yeah, I've pretty much seen all that World of Warcraft has to offer. You've seen all that Final Fantasy XIV has to offer. For sure, you've seen everything that Guild Wars 2 has to offer. ESO, for you, Lotro. So it's like, and these are all old games, right? They're not new. And you would even probably be able to say, like, yeah, I've seen all that New World has to offer. And it's like, but you want that type of game, I think. And I'm right there with you. Like, you want that, like, that social, story-driven, classic multiplayer type game. Yeah. And these new ones, like PAX Day and Dune Awakening, are sort of promising to be more survival-like. Even something like Star Citizen, which isn't an MMO by definition, but it's like 100 players in a server, doing space things, and it is effectively survival because you have to manage food and water. You just don't build bases or whatever. And so it's like, oh, man, like, there's a trend, I guess, with survival games being popular. I mean, look at Pal World and Shrouded, Nightingale. Yeah. So,
I mean, Dune Awakening, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And Dune's a survival planet. I don't see how you couldn't possibly include that into the game on some level. It would be silly otherwise. But if it was just an MMO where you didn't have to worry about water, sandworms, what's the point? There would be no point in the game. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to be Ashes of Creation. They're good friends at Lord Forged are hammering home with their podcast.
And that's the closest one, so it's kind of like on the horizon. I mean, Throne of Liberty seems a little bit... I get mixed stuff about that. I know Korea's numbers have dropped. It's not even out yet in the States. I guess the reviews are fairly positive, but their player base has dipped quite a bit, so I don't know what all that's about. I don't know if that's just a normal thing nowadays, especially with New World. I think we have a serious problem in people wanting to play the same thing. Sorry. We have a serious problem in people's attitudes toward wanting to play the same thing for multiple months to years, and that's kind of falling off. Like you were saying, like almost with COVID, we spent a year and a half, some longer, some shorter, literally being birds in a cage within our own homes and lifestyles. And so now you're starting to see those people that used to do, especially the ones like my age, between my age and your age and older, that, you know, we're not in our 20s or early 30s anymore. Like we need to like actually start doing stuff, like taking care of our bodies or taking care of, you know, those around us, kids, houses. Like for you,
grocery shopping,
you've
laundry,
got a
blah,
woodworking
blah, blah.
business that's growing. Yeah. So,
and that was a very obvious thing going right into COVID, was when about the same time that we started the tables, and we found initially we were pushing out a lot of tables, and we're still doing some here and there. We've got 2 in the works, but it was pretty rampant. And I think we could have probably done twice as many if we had, you know, if I didn't have another job and, you know, and I didn't live far away from the shop. We could have probably just kept the shop open and just started trying to rack it out as many tables as we could, because people were spending money on stuff for the house. People were renovating, and people were spending time indoors. So they found a lot of usage out of a gaming table because they were stuck at home playing RPGs and board games and card games. And they needed a new kitchen table because they, you know, Freddie, the 13-year-old, you know, tried to stage dive onto one of them or something and broke it.
Classic Freddie.
God, stupid Freddie. But yeah, it's, I guess, yeah. And I think that's part of it, is everyone's just been stir crazy. And you've probably experienced that. We've mentioned this before. I'm pretty sure that Expedia, you know, travel businesses and, you know, travel in general has picked up tremendously since post all that. So
it has.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what will be the next little lifestyle game for me. It is kind of sad that like you mentioned, I guess I have seen most of everything, or at least the things that I really care to. So I haven't seen everything in Final Fantasy 14. I probably haven't seen everything in WoW, but for the most part, I've seen enough.
It's like, yeah, but you know that those are easy enough to get back to, right? Like we know that like when The War Within comes out, you probably will have a period of time where you're mainly playing that. When Dawn Trail comes out for Final Fantasy 14, you know, it might swing that way. I know that we have a few friends on Xbox that are currently beta testing or whatever testing the Final Fantasy 14 on Xbox. And so eventually we'll be all getting together to play with those guys, and probably close to when Dawn Trail comes out. And so the hard part is this season right here of spring, where it's this like waiting period, and it's like a 2 to 3 month period, like mid-February to like mid-May, where it's just, there's nothing, you know, nothing coming. I mean, we've got Hellblade 2 on May 21st. The only other, I was just looking at this last night, like I said. I know Dragon's Dogma 2. I don't know when that comes out.
Next week.
Oh, well, there you go, right? So maybe this is all just a bit of a wasted effort right now.
Yeah, just a bunch. I don't know. I haven't yet to pick that out. Buy it. I've played a little bit of the first one, and I've been watching videos on the second one, and it does look really good.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Knowing me, I'll probably jump on it, I guess, if especially if other people, because it is multiplayer, right? I think.
That's
if
a really good question.
If it's a single-player game, I'll wait. But if it's a multiplayer, I might jump on it.
I need to look into it more. It's on the radar, like on the fringe, because I'm like, yeah, I know that's coming. But like you, I mean, my answer to the question I posed to you is basically the same as yours. Like, I've done everything that I want to do for the most part. Like I mentioned the Mythic Plus thing. Like, that's still there. But like I got onto Final Fantasy 14 this weekend to do the Easter or Little Ladies Day, I think is what it's called, event, which is whatever. But you earn like this mount. And I was like, well, sure, I'm going to do that because my only mount is a chocobo. And I don't know why I want more mounts. So I logged on to do that. And it was really, it was fun. Like, I see myself returning to Final Fantasy 14 off and on for sure. And I think we talked about it. I mean, I don't know if it was the beginning of this year or at some point, but like, we're kind of at that place now where we can kind of rotate between the three, like Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy 14, World of Warcraft, whenever the fancy hits us. And that's where I'm at. And so, I'm looking at it and I'm just like, whatever, like playing Fortnite because I've got college buddies that want to play Fortnite, playing WoW because I want to level and experience, Pandaria and all that stuff. Helldivers 2 because that's the hotness and that's what people are playing. And but then today we had a discussion on Fallout 76 and I'm thinking back to that and I'm like, oh man, like I don't dislike the game at all. In fact, I think it's a much better game now than it probably even was when we were playing it. But it's just that whole like it's when you're spending time, you're bored, and you just start looking at like photo albums. Do people do that? The Gen Alphas don't do that because they don't know what photo albums are unless their parents or grandparents keep them. But people our age, still have photo albums, and it's like you're bored and you're just looking at photo albums. That's what it feels like playing some of these games that you've already. You've experienced a ton already. And that's how, I feel about Fallout 76. And
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's still fun. Like, there's these one-off moments. Like, Metalis and I have been working through the Portal 2 multiplayer missions, and that's fun. What did I pick up? Oh, like I'm showing my oldest son Pokemon Platinum on an emulator that I have. And so that's fun, but it's like I'm not expecting to really engage with this, with either of these, those examples.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess and you said maybe it does sound a little morose or depressing. It's just like, but I think that's why it's important. And I think it's good that, you're watching like Lord of the Rings. You watched last week, you went and watched 1 and then went to the theaters to watch Dune Part 2. So I think that stuff is kind of where it's at until more of this new stuff comes out, or maybe you just start getting this urge to play something, or like you're doing like Elden Ring. And then you just work through that and whatever else. So
yeah, I did order a copy of Dune to read.
The book?
I wanted a
nice.
Yeah, wanted a hard copy and went to a local bookstore, and the lady looked at me like I had horns on my head when I asked her about the book.
What? She didn't know what it was?
She kind of knew. I mean, I think she's like, well, I don't really read fantasy, but...
Was this a young person or an old
No,
person?
older lady.
Oh, well, that's why then.
So,
if it was young, I was like, there's no way. I mean, it's the movie that's out right now that's big.
yeah.
There's no way you don't know what it is, but...
So I just ordered one, unfortunately. But I was hoping to get
You
some...
tried to support
drum up
small
some-
business.
Yeah, I did.
So maybe after we do Lord of the Rings or Fellowship, maybe we start our little book report on that then.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Do that. But yeah,
I want to read it.
That's about it.
I know that aside from what we've just talked about, ultimately, there's a few things. I came up with this idea at the beginning of the year, at the end, and my Steam library is probably a lot larger than yours is. And so for me, you know, I'll grab stuff on sale that I either want to play or that I've played in the past. It's like dirt cheap. So like Hollow Knight I've beaten, but it only ever goes 50% off. And so I was like, you know what? I want it in my library and it's on sale right now. So bought that. And then there's this other game called Shadowgate that's actually a remake of a text picture adventure from like the 90s. I think it was on Nintendo Entertainment System, Game Boy, and then obviously computer. And so they had the remake for that, and so I picked that up too. It was dirt cheap. But I made this list of games, and we talked about this in episode 1 that we did, or episode whatever, that was the first one we did in 2024, about like this playthrough list of just stuff in my Steam list. And the interesting feeling I have towards this is like I want to like save them, like save playing these games for like the right moment. And I just feel like as of the past month and a half, like there just hasn't been a right moment. Yeah, you know, like I'm either sick or I just don't, you know, get home from work and you don't feel like doing something new. You just feel like unwinding. And so that usually results in movies, books, or games you've already played. So,
yeah,
I don't know. That was kind of an impromptu what you've been up to, what's the word?
Rant.
Intervention? I don't know. Or rant, maybe. Do you want, maybe we kick this off right now. Do you want to do, I don't remember which of these it's on. Is it this one? Oh, hold on. I have a button. Maybe we just do one of these, Shiloh.
Oh.
Pick a card. Any card.
I've just startled Shiloh. Let's do the deck of many things and get a nice little let the fate decide. And while you're figuring all that out, because I sprung it on you, I did want to mention that last Wednesday, a few days before the launch of this episode, whatever, I was on. You do your thing, Shiloh. This is what people expect out of us. I was a guest on the Beyond the Verse podcast, which is a podcast focused on Star Citizen. So we've got dear friends doing Loreforged, which is Ashes of Creation, and the thing is, like, maybe when Ashes comes out and we're both playing it, maybe we'll talk about it on this show. But like, as of right now, we can't do that game any justice. And our friends Jibs Cash Sunny at Loreforged are. So if you are a listener to the show and somehow not in Loreforged, make your way over to loreforged.com to join them and what they're doing if you're interested in Ashes, because they, that's going to be a big space once Alpha 2 comes. So that's Ashes. But on the flip side, I have a good friend, Solus, on the whole Star Citizen train. And so I was a guest on his 50th podcast episode on Wednesday. And it was just a 2.5, well, no, more like 2 hours and 10-minute episode on just community questions around the game. Just talking the game, a year later of the pod, because again, Star Citizen is in development. It's playable, but like there's pretty serious changes that happen year after year. And so that was really fun. And I wanted to shout out both those separate creators because they're doing great things for their respective game. And if you're at all interested in either of those games, go give those guys follows and a listen. So that's my little friend plug, I suppose.
Absolutely.
What have you got? Well, what does the deck have for us?
Yeah, what does the deck have for us? Oddly enough.
Uh-oh. I can't see it. You got to hold it up. Oh, it's Yeah, it's all washed out. But the Fates, you said, huh?
Yeah, the Fates.
Interesting.
Sorry, I've got my thing here. I need to... All right, there we go. Yeah, just so that you don't think I'm cheating.
The Fates. Yeah, I can see it. Looks good.
All right. So the Fates question from the deck of many things. If you could learn one skill instantly, what would it be?
You know what? I think my knee-jerk response would be how to learn languages, or maybe just another language immediately. I just feel like that's the most useful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe... Yeah, I don't know. I guess alternatively, like something mechanical, like...
Flying a plane.
Yeah, well, I don't know how often I would have that ability.
True. You have to get a plane.
But
Or steal one.
You'd always be that guy. We just wear a shirt every time you're on a plane. Like, if something happens to the captain, I do know how to fly a plane. Well, I know they have 2 pilots these days anyway. Or like, I was thinking more like how like the all supreme knowledge on how cars and automotive engineering works, so that way if something goes wrong, like you can fix it yourself or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. I can think of 2 just right off the top of my head. My knee-jerk reaction is playing the violin.
Okay, I like that.
It's just an instrument that I've always loved and wanted. If I could pick a musical instrument, I'd probably try that one. I don't know.
Okay.
But we were talking, I think Weevil, Carb, and Qual and I were talking today about about just weird, because Weevil had mentioned that he was really watching these like blacksmithing YouTube videos, just like random skill-based, fascinating things you watch on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I had mentioned that I watch a lot of woodworking based ones just to learn more stuff, because I don't know as much as I should by any stretch of the imagination. Most of the real brains of the house woodworking goes to Papa House, which is not me. So I mentioned being able to turn wood like on a lathe, and that's just not a skill that my dad's into. We don't have a lathe. He's just not that type of woodworker. He's more of a carpenter, woodworker, furniture, practical things. And with my brain set, I guess, more, my brain's kind of half and half. Like, my parents are very mathematical and pragmatic, and I'm a little bit more artistic, so somewhere in the middle. But it would be nice to be able to make cool stuff like bowls and interesting things, and even incorporate that into the woodworking part that we currently do, with being able to make interesting looking stuff out of wood. So interesting. Yeah, I think that might be my answer, but a violin would be pretty sweet.
And we're talking, I mean, if you knew, I assume
I'm too old to be in a band, or...
Yeah, but you live so close to Nashville that let's assume here that the Fates card here is assuming...
I make a lot of money,
is assuming that you will become not just like, you don't just learn the skill, but like what would be a master,
really know the skill.
Right?
Yeah.
You all of a sudden you show up to these, you start busking. What do they call that on the street corners? It's busking, right? I don't know, hustling, whatever. English hard. You just start showing up,
hoeing,
the street corner, and you just start playing. And if you're that good, it's like, someone's gonna pick you up, and then you're gonna. Next thing you know, you're on Taylor Swift's Throwback Country album.
Ooh, that's coming at some point.
Beyonce just did a country album, so yeah, something's coming up.
Oh, maybe not. Well, we'll see.
Yeah,
But yeah, just
like that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you chorused me. I think violin might be my answer.
I like, though, the blacksmithing idea, though, that Weevil was mentioning, because that's a skill, like, you think, in my present human state, do simply not know how to make a knife or a sword or any item like that. Like, I just couldn't do it. I guess I could probably not also woodwork. Carpentry or whatever. Like, you gave me pieces of wood, like, in my head I look at that and I'm like, well, I know that with some nails I could make something.
Yeah.
But like
no nails.
Yeah, well, you guys no nails.
We don't use nails. But yeah,
no, I don't know, make a lot of holes and hope that things fit into them.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I was until I started learning. But yeah, it's the blacksmithing thing. I do watch stuff on that sometimes just because it is pretty fascinating how they melt down stuff in a crucible and then spread it out and then temper the metal and all this stuff that's involved with it. And especially when you get into making like Damascus blades and things like that, it's pretty fascinating. But
how do you feel about pottery? Because that's
interesting.
In the same ballpark, but not obviously the same.
Just with clay and rocks. Yeah. Just not my medium, I suppose.
Yeah, my uncle was a professional potter.
Oh.
And so I took a class in high school on that, and it was fun. I still have somewhere, I don't know if it's in this house or my parents', but something that like a bowl that I made, and I was very proud of it because if you've never done pottery before, it's very hard to get completely even surfaces. And so, like, let's assume you're making a bowl, and it's a very simple shape, right? Like, you throw the clay on, you start spinning it, you get your hands in there, and you just make a bowl shape. Like, you're not making these fancy vases or what have you. It's just a bowl. But then getting it so it's perfectly smooth on top is I guess, more of an intermediate level thing. And the one bowl that I made, it was like it looks like you could eat cereal out of it and not have to lower the milk or it's going to spill out of one side. Yeah. So maybe that's in the same vein as well. But, well, I think we can move on to the meat of the episode, which is this fellowship continued discussion. I think I had you start last time, so we'll do this one this time.
All right, class, settle down. It's time for book reports. Coniff, why don't you kick us off?
So, I was thinking about this today, Shiloh, and you can let me know how you feel. The first part of the Fellowship of the Ring, I think Peter Jackson did a really good job of covering and adapting. And let me sort of amend what I said and say he did a faithful job. Because he did adapt the rest of the book well, from what I can tell. But the problem that I have found is, ever since having gotten to Rivendell, I'm now, we just got to Lothlorien. They haven't gone into the city of whatever they call it. All these elf names I can't keep track of. But between Rivendell and Lothlorien, there's so much stuff that wasn't in the movie or was done differently in the movie that it's kind of hard to keep track of it all. And I know that we said we were going to start with Rivendell and maybe work our way up to Moria, and that's still kind of the plan. But I wanted to get your preliminary thoughts here on just your overall opinions on either the book or the movies, doesn't matter, on just Rivendell up to Moria. Like, it's the first time we see the Fellowship of the Ring. It's a pretty important piece to that book, but ultimately the whole story of all 3 books. What was your, like, I guess, like, how do you feel about Rivendell? And so let's start with Rivendell. Like just it, in my opinion, it's this like haven of the elves, just in the middle of the Middle Earth, the middle of the country. And that sentiment is echoed frequently by the hobbits in the book. Multiple times when they're in Moria, Pippin says, "I wish I was back at Rivendell." Frodo says the same thing. Sam, Merry.
Yeah. Thanks, Gimli, for suggesting this terrible idea.
It was Gandalf, though, actually, in the book. Now,
in the book,
yes. In the movie, Gimli does, but in the book, it was
Which doesn't
Gandalf.
really make any sense, because his ancestors would have been
Well, he would have known, right?
yeah, and he would
Yeah.
have known. That just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. He's
I
like,
agree.
"Oh no, everyone's dead."
It's like, well,
probably would have known about that
in the book, you kind of knew the state of things.
because they weren't just dead last week; they've been dead for a long time. So I don't know where you're getting your news from, buddy. So that
But
was a
Rivendell,
little-
who your take on Rivendell?
and I'm sort of on a fresh rewatch of the movies. So
Yes.
maybe it's a good. I can hold up the banner of the moviegoer this time around. But yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the books is actually Lothlorien.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff that's not included in the movie.
Yeah.
The White Stag, right?
I haven't gotten there yet, so I'm not sure.
Oops, spoilers.
Well, I mean, once upon a time, but even like you're saying, even up
Is that
until
in-
the White
Yeah, I
Stag's
think
not in Rivendell. It hasn't come up yet, but
I think there's there's some interesting things that
yeah,
between Rivendell and when they get to I don't even remember the name of the elven city in Lothlorien. I should, but I don't. Galadriel and
Galadrim or something, Galadrim. I know they say that if it's in the book a few times.
sounds sort of right. And her husband is kind of
Caribor,
a dunce.
Celebor, Celebrant,
Caribor, yeah.
something. Ardeth is literally
Yeah,
squirming
rolling
in
in
his wherever he's listening to this right now. So, but okay, that's Lothlorien. But let's dial it back to Rivendell. Rivendell being a completely separate forest, completely separate part of the world, but also an elf haven, Elrond's house. The movies, I think, did a fantastic job of the atmosphere of it. And we see that some in, well, actually, I don't know if Rivendell is shown in the Rings of Power. I don't think so. I think Elrond and Galadriel are at some elven place in the far west, right? Is it kind of the...
Oh, you know
thing.
what? You might be right. I don't think it's Rivendell.
I don't think it's Rivendell either. But
It's yeah.
they have the same architecture, and it's this very like elegant but open design, with a lot of like
Arbors
terraces and yes. And in the movie it felt very, I don't want to say solemn, but like almost melancholy. Of course, like, they're all happy to see like Frodo and the hobbits are happy to see Gandalf in the movies, and
it's very peaceful.
just peaceful, but not like a happy peaceful, not a sad peaceful, just kind of serene. And what's interesting is in the books, Rivendell is somewhat the opposite, and a big piece that they left out of the movie, well, the opposite in terms of the emotion. It's very like vibrant and exciting, and the big piece that the books leave out is the whole feast that they all eat the day before the council.
The movie's left out.
The movie, yes. Yeah, the books, how dare they? J.R. Tolkien. But
Dang you.
The movie leaves it out, and in the book, it's this introduction Frodo gets to all of the House of Elrond. He notices Aragorn standing next to Arwen, which is next to Elrond. Gandalf's there, Bilbo's there, Gloin, a ton of elves. But then the key moment being that Bilbo and Aragorn have been working on a song, and Bilbo sings a part of it, and that's a very long part of that chapter. But it's just this like festive type of experience in the books, and in the movie it was very serious, very just peace. After their harrowing experience with the riders. And I think that's probably why it was done that way. We just saw Frodo about to die or become a wraith, and now he's in this almost heaven-like atmosphere.
Yeah, it's an interesting take if you think about the movies as a whole. I don't know, I can't think off the top of my head how many quote-unquote food or feasty moments are in the books.
A lot.
But if you think about the movies, of course, there's not a lot of time to eat. But food, other than the hobbits, it's delegated to Lambus bread and just Gimli's little speech, like meat right off the bone and stuff like that. Like it's either a very passing. It's completely different than, say, Game of Thrones, where there's a huge focus on food and feasts, and
because that's where people die.
Yeah, that's when you commit murder. Duh.
Right. And what's fascinating,
it's weddings and feasts. So.
Perfect time. Well, and it's interesting too, because there is the emphasis on that in the books, and of course we know the books are written by hobbits. Frodo and Bilbo. Well, The Hobbit being written by Bilbo, and I think Frodo is technically who writes the trilogy. And of course, with that background, like there is that emphasis on feasts. I mean, we talked about it with Tom Bombadil. They have a feast with him, and he tells stories, and that was but that whole thing left out.
And the feast at Rivendell left out.
Yeah,
and it's almost I don't know, Jackson. I mean, he looks pretty well fed to me, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Oh no. I think I'm just time constraints, Peter. Right? But you watch the extended version. But there's a lot
to be said about those types of moments in movies and how much you can capture. Like that, the Rivendell thing, it's great to have all this cast of characters there all of a sudden, but it is almost like Deus Ex Machina, like all of a sudden there's men here, and there's, I know Elrond called them all, Council of Elrond, and they like, come to Rivendell. But it would have been nice to have a little introductory moment other than them all sitting around or in a circle arguing and bickering until the ring, drives Frodo nuts, and he just says, I'll take it.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Is instead of that scene with Aragorn and Narsil and Boromir, where Boromir cuts his finger and then drops it on the ground.
Sort of pointless. Well, excuse the pun. But yeah, it's...
it definitely had a point.
Would have been nice to have a little feast there. You can introduce all these characters rather than having these little love moments with Arwen and Aragorn, and the little weirdness with Boromir and Aragorn. And, I mean, I know that this partly character development, but you could have... I'm doing the thing that I almost hate, and that's people being critical of things that they can't make. And
yeah, but you're seeing both sides of it, right? Like, as far as how the books portray that part of the story, how the movie portrays it, whether or not Peter Jackson did the right job is not for you or I to decide, but we can at least
it would have been nice to
it.
have the feast.
I agree, especially with how
sense.
important that is to hobbits specifically. You know, it would have given a little more to Frodo and Bilbo being reunited instead of the quick little experience where he goes all creepy on Frodo over the ring for a moment. And that is in the book too. It's funny how like these little things that are in the books, Peter Jackson's like, yep, we need that to
definitely
happen.
doing that. Bombadil, no.
Yes. Again,
Bilbo turning into a
almost
creepster for
yeah,
30 seconds, 5 seconds, to putting that in.
absolutely we are.
Very, very strange. But yeah, so I'm trying to think if there's, I remember one thing about, there's one thing I really wanted to mention about Rivendell, and I can't remember it now.
Does it have to do with the council?
So I guess I don't remember it.
Gimli,
don't think so.
Gloin, Legolas.
In the books they had mentioned that Glorfindel wasn't there, and I think there was a Gandalf had mentioned in particular that he wasn't there because he was almost bigger than life or something like that.
Yeah, he's not really in the council at all. And there's something with him just drawing too much attention. And I know that's what Ardeth had said too, as an explanation when we talked about it.
Okay, maybe that's it then.
But it's, yeah, I don't know that he even goes to.
I don't think he's even there.
Well, no, I think he is at the feast. Again, another moment where the feast would have been nice to see. But the interesting thing is, though, is the council is not so much on what to do with the ring as much as it is the dwarves by way of Gloin and then Boromir by way of Gondor telling what's happening in the respective other parts of Middle-earth. And the big chief of that is Gloin, spending a lot of time talking about the dwarven doings and how a messenger from Sauron had come and visited them and said that they could return 3 of the dwarven rings to them in exchange for news or information on a ring that a hobbit had found. And so that's fascinating. And of course, Gloin says in the book, he's like, we did not respond to them and all this stuff. And so it goes on and on about the nature of what is happening with the dwarves. Boromir briefly says, what's going on in Gondor, or what's happening and, coming here. But then we get a lot from Gandalf, and that's really where we learn about Saruman's betrayal. And so that's interesting. And as a kid, I know that, like, the Council of Elrond was a pretty boring chapter. But as an adult, I'm like, well, this is actually all interesting because it is the state of the world as they find themselves in. And then at the very end, they say, all right, well, now what do we do about this ring? And the chief difference I noticed is in the book when Frodo finally says, I will take it. I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. In the book, it's all quiet. Like, they're all just sitting there, like, quietly, like, silence, contemplating. And then he says it. Whereas in the movie, it was a completely different vibe. Just the opposite, really, of just everyone arguing.
Mom and dad's arguing.
The kid
times
finally
12.
steps in. Yeah.
Mom, Dad, just shut up and love each other. Yeah, it's I always liked that scene, both in the movie and in the books. But it's
I do like the movie version, though, because when Frodo finally says it, you just see Gandalf go like,
thank goodness.
No, I think he's like,
well, it's sort of relief, but also like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he knew it's what had to happen, but he didn't necessarily want it to happen.
Elrond knows the exact
Frodo.
same thing. Yep.
Yeah, they're like, this is the way it's got to go down.
In the book, Bilbo actually suggests because he's like, well, I'm the one who started this, so I ought to finish it.
Yeah. And they're like, no, old man.
And what's interesting about that is part of me is like, okay, how much are they saying no because he is legitimately old and probably wouldn't survive, and how much of is it Gandalf being like, and I don't think we want to give you the ring.
I think it's more of that than the old part. Because he probably, as soon as he put it on once or had it back in his possession, he'd probably just quit aging and, I don't know, maybe go back in time and get a little more youthful. Not really, but
start to turn into
maybe
Gollum.
a little spring in his step. Yeah, I don't know.
But there's no way he would part. I mean, we even see Frodo at the very end of Return of the King fail. Mm-hmm. And so there's no way Bilbo would have made it half that way.
Nope.
So.
Nope. But it choked Gollum out.
Or Gollum would have choked him out. I don't know.
Yeah, they both would have been dead. And their ring would have just laid there on top of one. Both of them. That's how it would have ended. Movie over. Cutscene. Sauron comes over and picks it up off Bilbo and Gollum's corpses. The trailers.
Oh, well,
Finito.
so that's Rivendell for the most part. I mean, there's other little things here and there. I don't remember all of them, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember because I haven't read recently. I haven't read Rivendell part yet. There's like songs and kids dancing and stuff.
I think that's the feast part, as from what I can remember. But they don't leave right away from Rivendell either.
Yeah.
That is the other thing too, is the book or the movie makes it seem like a very quick stay.
Yeah,
and
like
it's
2 or 3 days and they're gone.
Yeah, it's not. Like they're planning and, all right, now we're going to be off. And there's a reason for that. I don't remember what it is of why they waited a little bit. I don't know if it was they're waiting for information. Oh, that's right. That's why. Elrond, his sons, or scouts and stuff, and I think actually Legolas and Aragorn go as well. They're going and scouting around for news of like what's happening, and then they come back and then they're like, all right, now we can go. So there's a whole like period where they're just hanging out in Rivendell for a bit before they actually set out. So, but once they do set out, and this kind of moves into the Caradhras, the Pass of Caradhras, or whatever it's called, and then into Moria, they set out going south. And at one point, Pippin makes the comment that it's like they've turned eastward into the mountains, and Gandalf's like, no. And of course, Gandalf just has no patience with Pippin. He's like, if you would have studied the maps at Elrond's, you would have known that the mountains curve to the west a bit. And Pippin's reply is something along the lines of like, yeah, I did look at them, but I don't have the mind for such a thing. They did a great job of capturing Pippin in the movie with Billy Boyd. Mm-hmm. Like, he's not as dumb in the book as they portrayed him in the movie, but you see that many times where the film or the show version is a little more pronounced of a character's flaws or traits, just because it comes across better. But
yeah,
it's hilarious that just all this stuff. Of course, the fool of a took thing, throw yourself in next time and rid us all of your stupidity. That's not the exact line in the book, but what I wanted to mention. So in the movies, you get the scene with the birds, right, that flies over.
Crabans,
yes.
Cravens, crows, basically.
That's also in the book, but then in the book, you get a night where they are besieged by like shadow wolves of the enemy. And in the book, it talks, there's a brief combat, endeavor between Aragorn, all the Fellowship and these wolves and stuff. And then in the morning, like they say, there's no trace of them, because they're shadow wolves. And so then that's when they go up the mountains to try to get past the, the Misty Mountains. And that whole thing fails. But what I found interesting about the wolf situation, Shiloh, is that it's almost, in the book, like you get that moment of combat with the Fellowship. But in the movie, we don't see the Fellowship doing hardly anything combat related until Balin's tomb in Moria. Or the Watcher, I suppose.
The Watcher in the Deep, yeah.
But that's like brief. And what's interesting about that is Balin's tomb, that whole fight scene in the movie, that's not in the book at all. Mm-hmm. Like it's a very brief thing, and then it's done. It's not like, they don't fight the troll. They don't, fight these hordes of orcs. There's like a small little skirmish, and then they run out the side door. Gandalf goes to close it and then gets thrown down the stairs and says, there's something beyond the door that I've never seen before. Of course, we know that's the Balrog. But, that whole there's so much that happens in that sequence, like the mountain pass. But so Peter Jackson did a good job of like hitting on each of those things. I mean, the wolves he left out, but he hit the ravens, he hits the pass. In the movie, it's more pronounced as it being like because of Saruman that they're having struggles. Mm-hmm. They don't outright say that in the books, but it's kind of suggested. And then the whole Watcher situation it's like just one or two tentacles get lopped off and then they're into the mines. Yeah. So you have any thoughts on that sequence at all from the movie or your Once Upon a Time reading? And is there any extra parts in the extended version that you can think of during either of those or that whole section?
I don't think so. Thing is, I've watched the extended editions.
That's a good point.
For pretty much, because I used to own them. So any rewatched, the only time I've ever seen the actual theatrical one was in the theater, so I don't really know. It's hard for me. I know some parts of, like, especially Return of the King, like the Mouth of Sauron was left out, which is one of the best parts of the extended edition. And that's kind of sad. I think the scene with Galadriel giving the gifts, maybe,
that's not in the
theatrical version.
One, from what I can remember.
Which is weird because I think they show her giving the light to Frodo.
Yeah, but then she gives something to Gimli too, or.
But the rest of them talking about like what they got, like Sam getting the rope and Merry and Pippin getting the daggers, and Gimli gets 3 strands of hair.
Yep.
That is in the movies, and I don't think it's the extended edition. I don't think that was
not in the theatrical one. So that's the version I watched recently, was theatrical. But I haven't watched the extended in a while. But I think you're right. I think there's more extended stuff in the last 2 movies than Fellowship, from what I remember.
Yeah. A couple of interesting points of the old 1979 anime version of the Lord of the Rings that I'd like to mention. They don't have any mention. The books do, but they don't mention like what happens to Bill the pony.
Oh yeah.
I always thought that was really cute when Sam's like, goodbye, poor Bill. Oh, Bill. And
that's not
a little
in the
pony
show.
just like going whap, 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 and just leaves Moria and just walks up. And then the scene when they finally interact with the Watcher in the deep, Watcher of the Deep, whatever, when they had to make a run for it into Moria, and in the anime version, it like reaches out its tentacles and shuts the door shut rather than like knocking like all the rocks.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was pretty funny. Like, yep, I guess we're stuck in here now.
We don't want to go back out with that thing.
Yeah, he can shut doors.
Well, and Gandalf cast a spell on Bill as well in the book to get him to return home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Good
he
job,
mentions
Gandalf.
it's more subtle. Like he puts his hand on Bill and then speaks to him and something, and that's what he's doing. And of course, that makes Sam a little. Because Sam is like,
He's
just not having it. Yeah, he's not having it in the books.
Bill.
Yeah. I don't think that's in.
It's not in the movie.
Does Aragorn make a comment like, "The mountains are no place for a pony, Bill or Sam"? I swear, like that's like a one-off line in the movies. I don't know if it's in. I'd have to watch it again. It looks like I know what I'm doing within the next few weeks.
I think it is. Yeah.
I thought so, but anyway, yeah. So that's that whole sequence. It's not very. I say it's not very eventful, but it's not like. It's just typical like storytelling of this new group of people that are learning to adventure together, if you will. With Aragorn and Boromir carrying the hobbits down the mountain because the snow drifts are too deep. Legolas, of course, just walking on top. That was a nice touch in the movie that we see where they're all wading through the snow and he's just prancing around on top. That's in the book. Yeah, the whole sequence with the door and melon, like what's the Elvish word for friend? That's in the book. So all that, goes. But I did want to touch on what you mentioned at the beginning of this with Gimli suggesting they go to Moria, because that is the biggest difference between the book and the movie. Is one, in the book, Gimli and Gloin being Gimli's father, they're both aware of the dangers of Moria. They know that it was lost, all this stuff. They also know that Balin went with a party to try to retake it, but they hadn't heard anything from him. So they don't know what he's doing, or what's happened. And so everybody in this situation of the Fellowship knows, well, like Gimli and Aragorn and Gandalf and even a little Legolas know like the situation at Moria and the mines of Moria. And it's Gandalf that is the one that really pushes for that, because he's like, our options are the Caradus Pass or the mines. Boromir suggests multiple times that they travel south into the Rohirrim, and Gandalf's like, no, that's too close to Saruman. Obviously, Gandalf is still shell-shocked from his
beat down.
But Aragorn is pretty against going through Moria, as is Legolas, as is multiple hobbits. So it's interesting to me that they,
yeah. Well, at that point,
that.
they really had no other choice. So
yeah, they did. But it's interesting that they make it out in the movies that Gimli's I haven't been here in years. Surely it's a welcoming.
Yeah, it's like Target. It should be fine.
And like you said, they were not dead recently.
No, they've been crusty for a while. So,
yeah.
But it is what it is. It was still good theater. I mean, it was still fun and interesting.
I mean, that's like the best part of the Fellowship movie, in my opinion. Like as far as just action and even some character development, because we learn about Gollum. I know that in the books, Frodo keeps hearing Gollum, but they never have a conversation about it like they do in the movies. but just character development between Gimli and Legolas a little bit, or Aragorn, Boromir, just all the party kind of becoming their own. Like, it's very fun in the movie, that sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So,
agreed.
Yeah, that's Moria. I think up to where I'm at, like, is right. Like I said, up to Lothlorien, and there's a whole sequence of things within the something Mirkwood. Is that Mirkwood? Is that what that forest is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where Lothlorien is, yeah.
Yeah. Like with Haldir, there's a whole moment where orcs go on by and they're up in the tree. The Fellowship's been pulled up in the trees by Haldir and some of his scouts. Gollum is around and stuff. And so, there's this part leading up to Lothlorien that they left out after Moria. But what's interesting to me is, of course, the film makes it more about the Gandalf tragedy than the book does. Like, the books, it's kind of like, oh, everyone's sad and weeping for, a half a day. And then after that, it's like, all right, time to get to the forest and move on. Aragorn's like, I'll be the leader now. So,
wow.
It is what it is. You got any other thoughts, Shiloh, on this at all? This part of Fellowship?
No. I'm trying to think of the connection between Mirkwood and Lorien. I don't know if they're separate woods or... I know they're connected.
I'll have to look up a map.
I'm trying to see my map from... I've got a big map over my bed, and I can't really see it from here because there's a huge...
There's Tolkien's Middle-earth behind you. Does that have the maps in it?
Oh, yeah.
Here we find out. Uh-oh. Another book just about took a tumble.
Oh, Stephen King. He's always trying to encroach on stuff.
Do you want to hold this up for the camera real quick, the front of this book?
Oh, look. It's the first one I pulled out. Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
I don't know if it'll...
For our listener, Shiloh has the map of Tolkien's Middle-earth. And it is glorious. Yeah, so you should see what Lothlorien should be east of the Misty Mountains in that.
Yeah, see, there's Lorien.
Oh. Mirkwood's up then, right?
That's Fangorn. That's where Pippin and Merry are. And where they re-meet Gandalf the White.
Yes.
Aragorn and Legolas.
But Mirkwood is that forest up to the northeast from that, right? That whole set of trees.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're really not connected. They're split by that river. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Anduin. The Great River.
Yeah, which we'll get there in the final episode, or the final...
Yeah. So, but they end up
book
going...
report on this.
Okay, yeah, because there's Rivendell.
Yeah.
So that's the High Pass. That's the Karok Pass, I'm guessing, right there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Moria. Khazad-dûm. Where is it?
Somewhere between that Rivendell and, yeah, somewhere in that mountain. So, yeah, they do
Moria
that.
Gate, right there.
They cut pretty far south then. By trying, once the...
To get to Galadriel. Well, they have to because of the heel. Well, no. What am I thinking of? Well...
Those wolves are really giving them a fright at one point in the book.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so it's there is this resource, and when Ardeth comes on to the show, he'll be able to mention it. But there's a resource out there online that's the map of Middle-earth, and you can see the path of the Fellowship, each individual Fellowship member when the Fellowship breaks apart. I think even beforehand as they go up to Rivendell. And so it's just all these, like, the journey of each of the characters and where they go and where they end up. And it's very fascinating to look at because it's all over the place, across the Misty Mountains into Rohan and then into Gondor and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah. Well, a little shorter episode this time than typical, which is nice because, again, as we talked about at the beginning of the episode, there's just kind of a funk with games at the moment, you know. Once we get into, I guess, summer season is probably when we'll start to see stuff. I know that I did put on my calendar, Summer Games Fest Showcase is June 7th or 12th. I'll have to go look, but it's sitting on my computer calendar. So I'll post that out there, and we'll talk about it when it gets closer, because then maybe we can watch it and stuff. But yeah, I mean, everybody knows this. This is no, you know, nothing unusual in video gaming for this to be sort of a dry spell. And of course, after the year we had last year, it's kind of to be expected. So
yeah.
Any final thoughts, Shiloh, or words of wisdom?
I don't believe so. Make sure you stay tuned, as our buddy Jordan will be joining us next episode. So we'll be getting back into board games next episode. Yes,
sir. And I will be fresh off of another weekly night of gaming on Friday, board gaming. So
there you go.
Perfect timing. All right. Thank you, listener. Take care, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.
Questing the Multiverse is brought to you in part by Coniff Productions, Howes Wood Designs, and Joel Crawford. To follow along with our adventures, please follow us on Twitter at QTM Podcast and consider joining our Discord, the link of which can be found in the show notes or in our Twitter bio. Want your questions or comments read on the show? Email us at questingthemultiverse@gmail.com. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.